Good afternoon, everybody. It's Wednesday the 13th of January, and this is our learning challenge lesson for today, all about earthquakes. So we're going to learn a little bit more in detail about earthquakes and what they are. So first of all, what is an earthquake? An earthquake is a shaking or a shock of the Earth's surface. It's when you feel the ground move in some way. So, some facts about earthquakes. It's the Earth's way of releasing stress. So when it's all this built up pressure inside the ground that builds up and up and up. And the only way for it to come out is for it to break through the ground. It can't be predicted when it's going to happen. So they've got no idea when an earthquake will happen. And scientists are trying to work out if they can find a way of predicting when it's going to happen. So they're still working on that now. There are 1 million earthquakes that happen every year. Wow, that's a lot of earthquakes. And earthquakes don't usually last very long at all. Even though they can cause some real damage, they only last less than 1 minute. So it's not very long at all. So, what actually causes an earthquake? You can see there the split in the ground where it's actually broken up the ground. A huge crater. Wow. The world is built up like a jigsaw, like we talked about the other day. And it's made up of these lines that are underneath the ground, and they're known as tectonic plates. Now these so on this map here you can see these are purple lines all scattered all around the world in those different places, and they are the tectonic plates spread about the world. And as we talked about the other day, we could see where the tectonic plates around America and South America, there's a huge area there which moves right the way around to the other side of the globe, which you can't see, obviously with the globe being round, but they've put this spread out on a map so it looks like the world is flat. So, the moving tectonic plates, and they are constantly moving in different directions all the time. So you can see where these arrows are pointing, that's the direction that those plates are moving to, which is why it can cause a lot of these collisions where the land pushes into one another and causes the earthquakes. So there are more moving tectonic plates moving all the way around. Again, you can see these arrows from where the tectonic plates are moving to, so they're constantly either pushing into each other or pulling away from each other or rubbing against each other. And those are all different ways that cause these earthquakes to happen. So again, like we saw the other day when we looked at the 3 different ways that they move. So it's when they push away from each other, so they've used some fancy words here. Diverge, which is when they push away. Converge is when they push together. And transform is when they rub against each other side by side. So there are things called fault lines that are in the ground, and as the plates try and move, the stress and the friction builds up. So it's that build-up of pressure that we talked about at the start. That pressure gets trapped and it has to eventually come out in some way. So all that stored energy eventually has to be released. Uh-oh. What do you think might happen? If it's going to be released, that's right, the earthquake begins. It starts to shake the ground because the pressure has to come out at some point. So the earthquake is its strongest at the epicenter. So the epicenter, as you can see on the diagram here, is where that red dot in the middle along that horizontal line is. That's at the very top. That's where it's at its strongest. So seismic waves travel through the Earth. So seismic waves are a bit like vibrations, like sonic waves that travel from where the earthquake has occurred, where it's happened, and it spreads out along the land. and it makes those vibrations travel, and that's what makes all the ground tremble and move. So how are they measured? They're measured by people that are called seismologists, and they use seismometers to actually measure how strong an earthquake is, which is not, and it's measured on a number scale. Sorry, it's called the Richter scale, and they use this, as we talked about the other day, talking about the different numbering from 0 to 2, which is very, very small to the point we don't even feel any of it, so it's not even felt by anyone, so they don't even measure it. But then as it goes higher, from 2 up to 4, it starts to show a little bit of, sometimes it's felt on the ground, but maybe there's no damage at all. Then there might be some shaking of things going around, little bits of damage. And then it gets, the higher the number, of course, the more serious the damage is, the stronger the earthquake was, to the point where it could be up to 10, 9 or 10, where it's extreme destruction, where buildings completely fall down. The land could have huge, massive gaps in them. Cars can fall down into holes, things like that. Really, really dangerous stuff. Tsunamis. Now, I know the other day that someone talked about a tsunami, and these are connected to earthquakes, and we'll explain why, how tsunamis are linked to earthquakes. Let's find out what a tsunami is. It's when an earthquake occurs at the bottom of the sea, and it pushes the water upwards, and it creates these huge waves, and these waves can be absolutely devastating, especially if the earthquake happens quite close by to land, because the waves will get bigger and bigger, and eventually they will have to crash out. And usually, when they crash out in the middle of the sea, in the middle of the ocean, if it's far away from land, nobody will feel anything. It won't have any impact on places that we live, especially places that are nearby the sea. But in this case, as you can see in this picture here, a huge tsunami nearby on the land could be absolutely catastrophic, where it could wipe out all these buildings and cause real devastation to the people that live there. And that is the end of our presentation. So now I would like you to move on to your next task, which is to create a top 10 list of earthquakes. So I want you to find the earthquake, where it happened, and how strong it was. So I've got a list here I want you to see. So our top 10. So we're going to locate and name some of the world's biggest earthquakes today. And you're going to research the top 10 biggest earthquakes and the year that they happened. And then in our next lesson, we're going to locate them. So we're going to find them and see where they would go on a map. Okay, so I'd like you to list it. Again, you can write it down on a piece of paper, or you can do it on a Word document, typing it out from numbers 1 to 10. Obviously number 1, the top, biggest, most powerful earthquake, and when did it happen? Where did it happen? Alright, good luck with that task, boys and girls. I shall speak to you later.